The best advice I could give anybody is just to coach. Keep putting yourself out there, because the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then you start to figure it all out. And I hear newer coaches saying to me, well, I need the website and I need to do this and I got to do that. And really all you have to do is coach.
Nurses, nurse coaches, welcome back to the Nurse Coach Collective podcast. Today, I am joined by the amazing Karri Willie. Karri, thank you so much for joining me here today. Karri is a board-certified nurse coach and graduate of the Nurse Coach Collective. She runs a private coaching practice in rural Vermont in a collaborative office shared with 16 other practitioners of varying offerings. And the foundation of her practice is built on the principles of holistic lifestyle medicine, where she works with both individuals and organizations to reach their full potential by bridging the gap between allopathic and alternative medicine. And Karri has so far built an almost $7,500 per month practice solely by word of mouth and with the power of powerful conversations and connecting with people. Karri, welcome. I'm super excited to be able to have this conversation with you here today. We were chatting before we hit the record button, but thank you for being here.
Thank you, Peter. It's an honor to be with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. And a big reason why is because as I was reading over what it is that you wanted to talk about here today, what I realized is the way that you've built your practice and how you've built your practice and what you've built kind of stands against what most nurse coaches, it kind of dismantles many preconceived notions about like how a private practice is built and what it can look like. You know, and what I mean by that is like so many nurse coaches, and maybe you've experienced this yourself, think, oh man, I have to have 1 million followers on social media, or I have to have all this fancy gear, or I may have to live in a major metropolitan area. But here you are, and you have built it with no social media following in one of the least populated states inside the union. So Karri, talk to me a little bit about what it is that you've built and like how you have done this in a way that also seems to build so much joy inside of your life.
Getting on social media is uncomfortable for me. I'm working through that and working toward that for the future, but it's more comfortable for me to just like get in front of people one-on-one, like in front of their face. And so for me, even though sometimes it would be a little uncomfortable if I saw the CEO out on the street of the hospital, I would just like go up and just say, my name is Karri Willie. I am a board certified nurse coach, and nurse coaching is going to change healthcare. And like, for instance, this particular instance, he was like, oh, well, then I guess we need to have a conversation. And
wait, this is a real story that you're saying right here.
Yeah, it really happens, right? And so I was like, okay. So we, emailed back and forth a little bit and ended up meeting for coffee. And he ended up asking me at the end of our conversation, because I went into it, no expectations. And I didn't even really know what I was going to offer, talk to him about, but it just did the thing, right? I just went in and had a powerful conversation with him, and I couldn't believe it. He asked me to write him a proposal for a 6-month pilot program to come into his organization. Now, it hasn't happened as of yet, but we're still working towards that. And I did not expect that. But I think, I was speaking from my heart and really just, telling him all about what we do as nurse coaches.
Heck yeah, Karri. Cool. So how have you used that same model to build your practice of seeing people and meeting them in person, even though it's, can be a little bit scary, a little bit overwhelming sometimes, like just to put yourself out there? For you, this model works better than, say, maybe putting it on social media. So talk to me like how you've built your practice through invitation and referral and connection only.
Yeah, just putting myself out there, emailing people or even just asking them in person. I would love to invite you into my coaching container. No attachment to whether you want to work with me or not, but I would love to let you experience, because right, nurse coaching is not, you can't really explain. I think that's one of the hardest things, is trying to explain to somebody what we do, because it's just so amazing what we do, right? Like it's more of an experience. So I'm like, let me show you what this is all about. Come see me in my office, you know? And so people would do that, and, you know, I'd get some yeses. Of course you get the no's too, but, I'd get some yeses, and then word of mouth, and just continuing to do that.
I love this. Okay. So I think this is important to break down. Is it okay if we break this down for a second? Because this is kind of gold. So you're meeting people where they're at, and I guess describe to me just a few of these, like make it real for me. So where typically would you have you met somebody? Maybe atypically, typically, what are some scenarios where you might run into somebody who you'd then invite into a coaching conversation or a coaching container, as you spoke?
I do not hesitate to talk to anybody anywhere about nurse coaching. So the last person I had in here, into my office, was at the hair cutting salon. Because I'd worked at the local hospital for 20 years, I knew the CNO pretty well. So I just emailed her one day and I was like, hey, Julie, you know, I just graduated from my nurse coaching program, and I was wondering if you would be interested in, you know, just experiencing what nurse coaching's all about. And she was like, yeah, I would love that. So she came in, and I was like blown away, because she walked out of here that just on that first one, because a lot of times I'll do a couple sessions for people, and she walked out saying she wanted to hire me. And I was like, what? I did not expect that. Right? Just anywhere, really. I mean, and then I'm also in this, I chose to have an office, even though I didn't necessarily need to. I found a pretty decently priced office space, and it was in a collective with 16 other practitioners. So just being here, and there's a yoga studio in here and whatnot, just, you know, networking in here as well, and doing some workshops and things here. I also am really passionate about essential oils, so I do a lot of classes around that. And so then I've built some relationships that way.
To kind of, so I'm hearing you right, you're putting yourself in these situations. You're like, for instance, being inside of this collaborative environment where there's 16 other practitioners of various modalities surrounding you, who you can, you know, speak to them. They can refer to you. You can refer to them. It's a very collaborative approach. Reaching out to people you've already known, like for instance, your CNO, stopping your CEO on the street to have a conversation with him. We'll see where that one goes. And then comes the invitation, right? I want to invite you into my coaching container. And I think that's a really beautiful way of saying it, Kerri, because you're, you know, inviting them into this container, but then there's no attachment. And so you're serving them, and you're providing them with an experience of nurse coaching rather than talking about it until you're blue in the face. And I think like this is something that I have personally made a mistake about, which is like, here's what I do as a nurse coach. And then an hour later, I'm still trying to figure it out as I'm going through it. It's much better to, you know, describe it as through experience, and to have somebody have an experiential conversation. So super, super stoked for you to be able to have built this. And so then you're inside of these conversations, you provide experience, like an experience of nurse coaching to somebody. And then what happens? Then you invite them into a relationship with you, a professional relationship.
You know, I kind of get a feel the first, and of course this has taken a lot of practice, but kind of get a feel for where they're at in the stages of change and all of that. And I think maybe one more would be really beneficial to this person, so they can really see, you know, what this is all about, right? Or maybe they have such a profound experience in the first session that I think they're probably ready for a proposal, you know?
Don't push the proposal if it doesn't feel right, but if it does, then go for it. Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah. And I'm a wicked, you know, I also do Reiki, and very energy sensitive person. So I go with my gut.
Were you about to drop a wicked intuitive?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Little. I'm from New England, so that's a slang that runs.
Oh, I didn't know you were from New England. Awesome.
I love it. Yeah. Hell yeah. So, you know, I mentioned at the beginning of, you know, inside of your introduction, and we were kind of spitballing around this before we hopped on, and you've said that you've gotten to, you know, $5,000 a month comfortably, and that you had this one $10,000 month. And then I was like, oh, you know, if we can do it once, we can hit that ceiling again, you know? And so we kind of agreed on that $7,500 per month number. But what does that look like? What is your day to day? Like, what does your client load look like right now to be able to be comfortably in that 5 to 7,500 range, and then, you know, pushing into and being able to have already reached the 10K month, and then seeing that like, okay, that's possible for me. But yeah, I'm curious what your, if you don't mind sharing, what your
Yeah, no, not at
caseload
all.
kind of
So
looks like with your clients.
so the last school year, I had monthly contracts with the local school system. I was doing some coaching for their staff and also helping the yoga teacher in this collaborative to bring wellness opportunities into the school. So that was a really great base income for me coming in. And then this year, it's about the same. Smaller contracts. We were hoping for a bigger one, which did not end up happening. But these smaller contracts have made for a nice base income. And then my one-on-ones on top of that. So I comfortably, right at this time with that going on, and then having everything else that comes along with the business, comfortably between 5 and 7 clients.
Cool. I didn't know about that other contract
Yeah,
with the school. Yeah. And
yeah.
tell us a little bit more about what that looks like.
The yoga teacher had been contacted by the school system to see if we could bring some wellness opportunities in there. And she and I were just having a conversation out in the hallway. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to talk to them about nurse coaching as well. And she's like, well, you should come to the meeting with me. And so I met with her.
This is the yoga teacher where you
Yep.
work.
Yep. So we did awesome. These contracts together, actually, which was interesting as well. It was a very good experience. Learned a lot from it. But she and I met with their kind of wellness leader and the superintendent. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go into this and I'm going to coach. This was the first time that I had an opportunity to write a contract. The very first contract I ever had, proposal that I had ever written. I was working on the one that I had talked to you about earlier with the CEO. I was still in the works on that one because I had given myself a couple months to get that to him. And so this was the first actual one that I had written. And so I just started coaching them. I'm like, what's going on in the school? What things are you seeing since COVID has kind of been, annihilated for the time being anyway. And yeah, I just was able to, start conjuring up ideas for them, and they, explaining to them what nurse coaching is, and went from there. Just started growing from there.
Kerri, what I love about all of this is how it's how it just kind of feeds into itself, right? And so you surround yourself with this group of amazing practitioners, and by just a simple conversation inside of a hallway, you now end up having this really fantastic, steady baseline stream of income that you can then use as kind of like, I don't want to call it a safety net, but kind of like a relaxing, where you can be like, okay, I have some income coming in, and now I can begin to work with more one-to-one clients. And so talk to me a little bit more about like what you're, like who you typically love to work with, and like what you, like where does your joy live? Because I think so far pardon me if I kind of jumped into the nitty gritty of things, but I was like just super stoked. I'm like, wow, here's this person who's living in rural Vermont who has never touched social media, who's built really a thriving private practice, who touched a 10K month. And so now we know that's just a super possibility. You're comfortably inside the $7,500 per month range, and all really, really fantastic, awesome things. And so what I want to know now is like, where's your joy inside? Like, where do you find that? Where's your joy live inside of your practice when you're working with your clients? What do you love to serve and support them with?
I love to help empower them to just live into their truest, fullest potential, and just to change their mindset, working. That was one of the most profound things for me with the collective, is really learning myself how to, I think I've been asked before, like, what are you most proud of? And I'm most proud of my own personal growth and going deep and learning how to be more present right? That was so profound for me. And so now I really find that work with others so fulfilling, to help them become more present and really like listen to themselves and trust themselves and live into their best version.
So learning to trust themselves, learning to really listen to themselves. And have you found yourself gravitating towards a certain type of person, a person with a certain psychodemographic, we can call it?
Well, it's
Or
interesting
a certain
because
type of person?
it ends up with the school contracts that I was doing. The people who were signing up most for coaching were the leaders. So I have found a huge joy because they're a lot of times in, especially if they're the ones signing up for coaching in a growth mindset. So I've also found great joy in working with that population of people,
With leaders inside of the school and
which is kind of where I would like to go with my bigger contracts, is like this contract with the healthcare organization, the CEO. It wasn't the hospital, this bigger one that he asked me to do. It was offices. He has like several offices, and he also does the home health area here. This was going to be more of a top down kind of model where I would go in and like help coach the leaders first and then like change culture in the whole organization. And that's kind of where I'm heading, I think.
well, I love that you're getting practice in so many of these different areas, because for me, that's what I always see it as, is like this, everything is right. That's why we call it a practice as nurse coaches and as nurses, right? It's practicing to be able to improve and to go to ultimately where you want to end up. And I think that's fantastic that like leaders are gravitating towards you inside the school system and you're getting comfortable working with them. Because for me, what I found is I used to kind of put people who were in leadership on a certain pedestal. And, you know, in working with them, what we realize is they're people, right? They're people, they're humans with, you know, normal problems, but, you know, and that can really impact their work. And so I think it's so great that you're working with leaders inside the school to be able to, you know, help them elevate so they can like have that top down approach. And then but you also have your eye on the longer vision of like where it is that you also want to go to, because I think that probably excites you and, you know, gets you ramped up and fired up and continuing to do what you do.
I mean, I guess the thought that came to me when you said that was, you know, just going to the like again, I went to the hospital, like I did like a free wellness visit thing or wellness festival that they had, and I went and sat with my coaching table and talk about nurse coaching. And again, just and of course I know some of these people. I used to work at the hospital for 20 years, but the HR director came through and I was like, hey, come on over, let's have a conversation. And she was like, oh yeah, what are you up to? And so I was telling her about what I was, you know, some of the stuff, and she wanted to see what my proposal looked like too. So just, you know, that networking is so important, and just, I don't know, just putting yourself out there, right? Like,
yes. Yeah, I'm so happy for you. I want to say proud, but I'm really happy for you that you have.
It means a lot to hear you say that, really.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your program. So
what I really want to appreciate is that you've kind of taken everything that you've learned and you've just ran with it. You've unleashed it in like your own very creative way, because, you know, we can show you everything, but unless you're willing to like do the work and also to like really step up and to try new things and to connect with everybody, as you're saying, like that's where the magic really lies. And like if I could kind of boil all of marketing and like the beginning stages of marketing down into one piece, it's just talk about what you're doing. Even if you're afraid, like go out and talk about what it is that you're doing, because then you end up in this beautiful scenario that you're in, which is, you know, you're building something while also keeping your eye on like what it is that you're going to be building next.
Yeah. And I think that thought kind of came to me before you started speaking too, is just like that fear like gets in our way, right? And just push past it, because you never know what's on the other side. Like I did not expect the CNO to hire me, first of all, you know, and I did not expect that CEO to ask me to write a proposal for him. I mean, it's just like I pushed through that fear and didn't go into it like thinking I had to be something, or, you know, and like you said, I really liked how you brought up that leaders are people, like, and I think that really set that in for me when I went and had these conversations with them. It's like, wow, they're just like you and I. Like, they need us and I've heard other coaches say this, like, they need us as bad as we need a coach, right? Like, they're people.
My invitation for the nurses and nurse coaches listening to this is like to take a moment and listen to this episode again, because I think the way that you have built your practice is so perfect, perfectly organic. Like, it's just done in such a beautiful, heart-centered way. And you're also really enjoying it. And, it's connecting with people. It's having those conversations, right? And in your initial conversation, when you were saying, I guide them through the experience of what it means to, experience nurse coaching, you're coaching them, and I think really the only difference between a coaching session and a introductory session is the proposal, right? The proposal at the end where you talk about logistics, because for the rest of that time, you're coaching them and you're serving them powerfully and supporting them. And then you create the proposal and you put it all together, and some say yes, some say no, but yes lives in the sea of no, and being unattached and being okay with that. And then just continuing to surround yourself with practitioners who are doing the things that you want to be doing, clients who, people who could potentially be clients, or people who could potentially benefit from your work, or could introduce you to other people who could benefit from your work. I mean, Kerri, you are doing like all of the right things, but in a really, seems like a really centered way.
Thanks. I want to highlight though that, it hasn't always been easy. I've been scared. I, have let fear get in the way some of the time, but just keep on one step in front of the other and doing the thing.
Maybe we can talk about that for a few moments, if that's okay.
Of course. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. I think this is also equally important to, highlight what's going well and to highlight like what you've had to push through. So how long about have you been in practice, like private practice for?
Yeah. So I graduated the collective. I was in 15. So I graduated January of 22. And then shortly thereafter started the practice. So I think I was like feeling ready to go February. Yeah. And I did the accelerator course, which I highly recommend. I was super helpful for me. And yeah, so a little under 2 years. The best advice I could give anybody is just to coach, keep putting yourself out there in the uncomfortable position and just doing it. Because the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then you start to figure it all out. And I hear a lot of newer coaches saying to me, well, I need the website and I need to do this and I got to do that. And really, it's all you have to do is coach. Like you don't need the website. You don't need any of that. I wish I would have known that too, but like, you just don't need any of that stuff.
Yes.
You need a contract and you need to coach, and that's it. So I think the most important thing is practicing, because you just get more comfortable, right, as you do it. And then you start to figure out, like, and then there's this whole thing about, you got to find your niche. Like, and I'm like, I have no idea what my niche is, but the more you coach, right, the more you start to see what your niche is.
Yeah. And I can hear moments inside of this conversation where I can tell like who maybe you're going to be drawn to, but also like what you're not limiting yourself in this moment in time, right? We are 18 months into the practice. Let's go, let's coach and bring in everybody so you can really start to feel out who it is that you want to work with.
Yeah. I'm still not ready to say I have a niche, because I've coached men. I've coached mostly women, but I've coached a few men, and that's been an extremely positive experience as well. So I hate to say that I know exactly what my niche is yet.
What's been the one moment where you held yourself back the most?
Well, I'm still doing it, to be honest with you, is putting myself on social media. But I'm working around that. I bought the ring light.
Yeah, we got a ring light.
Yeah, just starting baby steps into it, because I really would like to develop some courses and do some group stuff. And, at some point I would like to travel. One thing that I remember that was one of the highlights of your program was your exercise that you had us do there at the end, where we had to visualize where we were at a year from that moment. And we were going to talk to you on the phone, right? Like, we had to visualize that we were talking to you on the phone and telling you where we were at. And, I'm so close to it. Like, I want to travel. I want to live near the beach. I want to be able to coach and travel. So I feel like that's kind of my next step. And it's like, okay, you've come this far. You got to get through this vulnerability, this fear you have of putting yourself on social media. So,
well, thank you for expressing that fear. I think that's a big one. Y'all may or may not believe it, but I do struggle with that in many regards, because I think it's inherently vulnerable, and especially if you want to do it right, if you want to do it in a way that doesn't just highlight all of the positivity, but also highlights some of the real life, while also speaking to, the people that you want to be attracting and speaking to inside of your practice. So thank you for, opening up and kind of sharing that, like, yes, this is a moment of growth for you. And if we can briefly look back and see what it is that you've created over the past 18 months, then like you have such a good foundation to be able to, once like you start to build that and begin to move through some of the fear, some of the worry about, what that is, then there's this whole other beautiful piece, which is, the missing section, which is maybe living in a non-landlocked state, or, maybe being able to travel more and to coach more remotely. But Kerri, what you have built is such a beautiful foundation. And when we look at it all, a relatively short time frame, I mean, like 18 months is not that much time to build what you have built. And I think that's fantastic. And also very like realistic and reasonable.
Thanks, Peter.
Anything else that you want to share inside of this space, or anything we didn't talk about, anything you want to share with the nurse coaches who are listening to you?
I think the last thing that I'll leave you with, and I say this in almost every single one of my coaching containers, is and this was a mentor of mine, actually, the yoga teacher here at our studio, Andrea, because I am in her yoga teacher training program right now, just for personal growth. Not sure that I'll have time to be a yoga teacher, but it's been a really amazing experience. And she said this in one of our trainings: what is in the way is the way. And it's just a really profound statement when you really think about it. I've got some people, I'll say it to some people, and they're like, what does that mean? It's like, push through, right? Just push through and do the thing. Do the damn thing.
Do the damn thing. What is in the way is the way. I love that. I love that, Kerri. Thank you for that knowledge bomb there. Thank you for all of your wisdom that you've put out into this space. I'm stoked to be able to release this episode, because I'm just excited about what it is that you built, and what it is that you're going to be building, and also the way that you've done it, where you've done it, how you've done it. I think it's going to be inspiring to so many of the nurse coaches and nurses listening to this podcast. So,
I hope so, because,
yes,
we are going to change the world, nurse coaches. One
nurse coach at a time, changing the whole dang thing, the grassroots movement towards systemic change. I always think about that. And that always hits home, especially when I hear conversations like this, where I see like that in real life happening. I mean, the community that you're affecting where you are right now inside of Vermont, just to start, and then what's going to be bigger, right? You are the grassroots movement. Every single one of us is like these small pieces of this grassroots movement towards systemic change to transform healthcare. One nurse, one client, one conversation at a time, Kerri.
It's messy too. The action's messy. We don't necessarily need to know how we're going to do it, because when it comes down to it, we're just coaching, right? We know how to coach.
We know how to coach, and coaching is fluid. It's dynamic. We go in with an intention, and that's pretty much all we got. And then the rest, we lean on our tools, and we allow the conversation to go where it needs to go, and we allow our practice to go where it needs to go. Awesome. Well, Kerri, Willie, thank you so much for this conversation here today.
Thank you.
We have your details in the links below this video and below this podcast. So y'all, I highly encourage you to go check out and connect with Kerri. She's an amazing nurse coach, human. And Kerri, bottom of my heart, thanks for opening up and sharing all of your wisdom with the Nurse Coach Collective. We are eternally grateful.